All right. Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Just getting started here this Wednesday morning on our Instagram Live with Fox, otherwise known as Fox of Foxtracts on Instagram, excuse me. Thank you all for tuning in. Gonna get Fox in here in just a minute. All right, looks like he's here. Okay. Awesome. Thank you all for tuning in here. Excited to get this one started. Hey, what's up, Fox?
Hey, how's it going? Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, I can. How about for me?
Perfect.
Okay, awesome. I can get my camera all set up here. Cool. How's your morning going, man?
Pretty good. Another day in paradise, as they say.
Awesome. So I'm probably going to say this about 20 times throughout the course of the broadcast. We got people tuning in right now. Thank you all for joining our Instagram Live today. Really, really excited to have Fox. Fox, you were one of the very first people I met when I joined Peer Pressure, came in, pressed some rosin. I know you've been traveling all over the place. Where are you at right now?
Right now, I'm in Miami, Florida.
Nice. So what brought you out to Florida? Is that where you're from? Is that what I remember?
Yeah, actually born and raised. Weirdly enough, I came down here to see family, and then basically through the grapevine, I heard that the hemp program was picking up, so I decided to stick around here and kind of help some local friends kind of not get shafted, but also to put like a local foothold between all these farmers and manufacturers of CBD products that are local to the state. So I'm excited to help them out in that regard, because at the end of the day, you know, it's going to mean processing of some sort, and a lot of them are already excited to kind of move towards solventless CBD, so to speak. So
awesome. Well, that's cool that you've got some moves being made down in Florida. We know it's definitely a market that's picking up a lot of steam. For everyone who's tuning in, thank you for joining us. We're going to be talking mainly about CBD today. I've got a bunch of questions. If you've got something that you're dying to ask, hit the question box at the bottom and we'll try and get through some of those. But to get us started, Fox, tell everyone a little bit about yourself, you know, how long you've been making hash and kind of what you do.
Okay. Long short of it, I started making hash in the early 2000s. I was blessed enough to be around a group of individuals that were very dedicated to the plant regardless of what was going on around them. And so I got my hands on the plant at a very early age. And, you know, my first wash, probably 2003, 2004. And back then we weren't washing for, you know, rosin or even melts, honestly. We just really loved this bubble hash that we would either smoke with our weed or smoke in a chillum. So basically that's kind of what started it, you know, and playing with water and ice and then seeing that we could extract this product was always really cool to me. But that love took a break as I explored hydrocarbons for a really long time, more on science and the chemistry aspect of it to learn a little bit more. And accumulation of all that and things that happened to me personally led me to going out to California, getting a love for outdoor cannabis. Not only that, but being introduced to CBD plants before growers really knew what CBD was. You know, they knew that they had these special plants, and they kept them around because, you know, even though they didn't get you high, they made you feel really good. They made you feel, you know, they made the pain that you were dealing with really go away. So in a way, they started keeping these plants around for different reasons, and that kind of rubbed off. Started Foxtracts in 2014. The next year, took my second harvest then as a caregiver in Colorado. Had it processed, had it made into an edible, and that's what we won our first place Cannabis Cup win for. And nice. Since then, having really good friends in the industry that they just crush what they do with hydrocarbons and all that, that's never really been my focus. As a parent myself, starting out as a caregiver that worked and focused on working with children and making medicine for children, making oil for children, I had a lot of input from parents wanting a more organic, a more a cleaner end product. So now we're at a point with, you know, water hash extraction, mechanical separation, you know, whatever you want to call it. But not only that, you know, rosins come along, and how we can manipulate this biomass with just heat and pressure is really changed the game. A lot of people talk about the simplicity, oh, well, you're just using plates and heat and pressure, but there's infinitely so much more to it than that. And, you know, even before we can even get to that point where we're squishing something. So it's, you know, companies like Pure Pressure, as well as just like, you know, traditional old techniques as far as making hash have really kind of focused how I can focus the model of how I make my meds, you know, and how I make products for people under Foxtracts or, you know, whatever the case is. So
it sounds like there's definitely been some evolution there. I've got 2 questions and 1 comment. First, wicked beard. Beard game, super strong right now. Loving that.
I chopped off, man. I had to make it was all over the place.
Yeah, had to fit in the frame for the IG Live. What are you smoking on right now?
I am smoking on a mixture of lava cake, base cake, and I've got some churros and some ice cream cake rolled up. So all the sweet stuff today.
Nice. That's awesome. Cool. Have you been growing any fun strains lately, or what are you working on right now?
So right now, working on 2 basic projects. One, which is really the focus of the backbone of our work, is making strains that obviously yield better for mechanical separation, whether it's sift or water extraction. Obviously, on a focus of having high CBD cultivars or somewhere close, or in a broader spectrum than what we see. You know, I think the biggest problem with people and the biggest shtick I think people deal with solventless CBD is when we started, we really only had the same handful of strains plus the same hemp strains. So ideally, you know, what we were getting, you know, we weren't growing it the way that we were growing cultivars for hash, first of all, but more importantly, the flavor profile, you know, color, there was a lot of things that were off-putting that we weren't, you know, when we first started doing this, we were just like, okay, cool. It's obviously very different. And then you talk about, aside from the main differences in, you know, squishing CBD or THC, one of the biggest things was it's very viscous. It's very sappy to deal with. You know, oftentimes, unless you're manipulating the hash from the get before it even gets to that process, you know, of squishing it down, you're going to have a really hard time squishing certain material that even out of the bag when you're pulling it is like it's like a rubber glue. It's so sappy and sticky. It's so different. I recently did an interview with the Hashishin, and we talked a lot about that. And I wanted to talk specifically, the one thing I know I wanted to talk about was heads. You know, what I'm doing now is studying, you know, the differences, but not only studying, trying to kind of make some sort of standardization for people, extractors, growers, to see how truly different these heads are. You know, a lot of people mentioned, you know, a lot of the heads are short and thick and stocky, and they're very hard to, you know, to basically separate, you know, the cuticle from the rest of it, you know, without damaging the material or being abrasive. We've seen a lot of really amazing results with dry sift. You know, somebody had asked me how it's possible to maintain, you know, this is more of a hemp geared question, but trying to maintain a federal percentage, a legal one, as far as your THC threshold goes, because even the rosin is testing somewhere between 2 and 3%. Best bet at that point is dry material, because there's no heat manipulation involved. But doing so, involves a lot. I'll give you an example that's not cannabis related, but plant related. Cacti.
Okay.
So there's different sort of cacti, and obviously, you know, like a trichome protects the plant in the wild.
Mm-hmm.
These barbs and needle points protect the cacti in the wild. Some of these cacti, you can brush by them and you'll look down and you'll see a bunch of needles on your pants. They're very easily displaced and dislodged, but some have really thick thorn legs, like, you know, thorn leg barbs, and those fuckers stay. And if you touch just like a rose. I have been seeing a lot of, you know, with CBG specifically, they're really, it's an interesting head structure. So trying to wash it, you know, we found very little success. Sifting it, we found a lot greater success doing things like that. So it's a different profile, but at the end of the day, if you're trying to make something that's, you know, commercially viable in that spectrum for that market, you know, you have different options, you know? So it's just been about playing around with different methods, and you can run the same static techniques and the same clean up methods you would do for, you know, really amazing, you know, static sift melt, and do that and get some really amazing results. You know, it's just the labor of love, and no one's really, I don't want to say no one, there's a very small tribe of us doing those things off to the side. You know, it's a different, basically what I'd been asked was, and I don't notice this because I work with CBD all the time, but when I go back to growing my THC cultivars and the other things like that, it seems a lot easier to do than some of the other stuff that I currently do, which reminds me that there is a curve growing these heads, you know, and then not only growing them, but extracting them as well. It explains why you've had to have different, you know, different ideas and methods of like what is working better for us to extract solventlessly with this kind of material, whether it be, you know, smaller micron size, whether you're pulling bags, whether it be, you know, trying, you know, static sift or cryo sift, you know, or things like that altogether. But now, as we're, you know, getting on to 2020, with everything that we have available to us, you know, techniques, equipment, you know, open source conversations, knowledge, forums, these things are starting to become more commercially viable, which is really exciting. And not only that, on the genetic side of it, you've got a lot of people like what you originally asked is, I've got basically 8 to 12 cultivars in the works that are cannabis-derived, CBD-dominant cultivars that are all basically picked and selected for, you know, water extraction, you know, basically looking at percentages that aren't abysmal. You know, I've talked to producers around the country where, I mean, you know, let's say you're washing a 10,000 gram wash and you're getting a point percentage of that wash.
Yeah. Not viable.
No. And if you're a medical provider and you're doing this for a reason, because these patients need this, it puts your back against the wall even more, I think. So the genetic work that companies are doing, individuals are doing, I applaud them. I think that's the biggest that's allowed me to be able to move forward, you know, and tinker around. Because if we were messing around with the same 4 or 5 CBD strains that we were messing around with in 2011 and 12 and 14, you know, I don't think we'd get anywhere, you know? So it's really exciting to see the change, so to speak, and not even just for solventless extraction. You know, you want to create, if you're talking biomass, you want to create the highest percentage, most viably available biomass that you can, regardless of how you're extracting it. In our case, it's water and ice. You know, it's not to say that the material that we create and breed to create success for what we're doing can't have success for what other people are doing with hydrocarbons or, you know, whatever the case is. That's the whole point. You know, the more you can strip off your biomass, obviously, the better it is. So even though my focus is on solventless and what I've talked about, it's cool to have the support of other growers and extractors that are using our genetics in other ways to fit, what they need, whether it be for CBG projects, whether it's hemp projects, whether it's cannabis CBD based, CBD dominant projects. It's really exciting to see that and see more breeders get involved with that. So
awesome. Yeah, that's a lot of really good info for anyone who's just turning in, really talking about CBD genetics and especially trichome structure, which is something I want to zero in on a little bit more. Thank you all for tuning in. We're going to have a full recap when we're done with this at the very end. If you're tuning in late or you don't have time to watch the full thing, got Foxtracts with us here. You can follow him at Foxtracts on Instagram. Definitely recommend checking him out. So, question for you. I know that you've spent some time up in the Northwest for a while. Are you familiar with Farmhouse Genetics and what those guys have going on?
I am familiar with them. I follow them and their work, but I have not seen more than that right now. With the state of current affairs, it's hard to be on everything at the moment.
No, totally fair. The reason I bring it up is because one thing that you mentioned that's really interesting is just dialing in and zeroing in on trichome types and structures, and especially for CBD, it seems like a lot of CBD strains make very, very tiny trichomes that are difficult to capture. And they put out some macro photography recently that is worth anyone here checking out, showing, kind of a weak neck trichome where the head is very large, but it has a very, very small neck on it. And, seeing some of the macro photography of CBD strains, either the trichomes seem like they're too small, so they're really difficult to capture. So maybe that's why with sift, it's a little bit easier. They're not just going straight down the drain through, your 45 or your 25 bag. Do you have any more thoughts on kind of where those trichomes are going with these genetics, or kind of what you're looking for? Trying to get bigger trichomes to capture better, obviously.
Absolutely. So, and here's the thing that I'll be honest with, because it's the part that sucks, but I'll be honest with you.
So that's what we want.
It will be so rare that you can take, let's say you have a CBD dominant cultivar that you have for percentage, dominance in that compound, percentage rise or whatever, to something that is easy to wash, different terpene profile, maybe more commercially viable pipe strain, whatever. Insert any one of those that works for you. It is going to be super rare that on that first hit you're going to get anything that you can use, because you're going to have such a wide expression of both parents that at that point, you have to then, if you're for what I'm looking for, it's not just the heads. I have to, go and get them tested and make sure that they are, again, CBD dominant, and then look at head size, and then basically you see a shift in the breeding. You see a shift in the heads, and it's a labor of love to see those structures form into something that's unique, but still dominant in what you want it to be, but also all new monoterpene expressions, all new, water-based terpenes that to play with. It's an interesting thing. And that, what I just described, there's projects that I've had, like the ACDC backcross that I've done, and the Blueberry ACDC, which it's not even publicly released, 8 years on that. And that's just because I need to get it to a place where I can know that it's going to be out there and know that it's going to help. And it's not about exclusivity. I mean, I don't even think any one of my friends have really seen it, but it's a work in progress, because it's a lot of selecting, a lot of backcrossing, a lot of testing. It's all of that. And then when I've been doing this independently as one person. So I've been fortunate enough when I can work with people that have the same mindset of what I'm doing with this project to help me out, to further out. The biggest thing is testing. I think that's the hardest thing when you're looking at what you're looking at for this, because you want to stay in that right spectrum, of CBD, dominant, hash. Right. The job starts to get a little easier when you, one-to-one crosses and certain things that you're looking at different percentages and ratios. It's a little different. and it becomes a little bit easier. But to the flip side, with people working on the genetics the way that they are, I'm seeing new and amazing strains every day, you know, especially in the hemp field, and not even just with hemp, but we're just seeing trichome heads now that are straying away from what we've talked about, you know, that almost unfinished, oh yeah, Slimer, that unfinished, almost, you know, short, stocky, it's, you end up more often than not, you know, when we would scope the things that we'd first extract, we were getting more than the head. We were damaging the material. You have to, there's factors in this kind of material that it's not just screen size and mesh. I mean, you're talking different ambient temperature, water temperature, different techniques. Like, you know, there's things that I've learned along the way to try to apply, and I've seen better results. You know, where people talk point percentage yields, the highest CBD I've got is mid 7%. You know, I'm stoked about, but it's a flavor profile that people are, you know, yeah, it's a glue cross, but yeah, man, it was 7%. So, you know,
win's a win.
It wasn't 0.03%. So I don't know. You can't win with everyone, but the point is, you see, obvious, you know, there's, I'm working on a bunch of sour dub crosses that are obviously doing really well. There's a diesel cross. There's a lot of things that we're trying to bring back. You know, I'm going back to land races and calling them back to, you know, what we have now in these hybridized CBD wash heavy strains. Our friends over at Go Squish have seen some success with that too. There's a lot of different things that, you know, the genetics have been able to help me manipulate when it comes to the extracts. So I think that's the biggest step in all that. What we look for is excessive selective breeding with testing to back that we are still in the right lane that we're supposed to be. Then what I look for is, you know, people get tired, that's the same old terps, you know, and CBD, for the most part, the compound and a lot of CBD dominant cultivars have a lot of the same expressions.
Like myrcene, pretty heavy, earthy kind of flavors. Yeah, you're not getting those super exotic flavor profiles like Mac or GMO with some of the CBD strains, huh?
Yeah, but we're starting to see that. So I'm really...
Gotcha.
I've got a little Mac project in the work as well. You know, the only project I'm dropping this year is the Key Lime Pie CBD project, which is ocean grown seeds, I believe. I was able to acquire the cut, so I'm taking every one of my CBD babies to that key lime because it's one of my personal favorite THC smokes. So I'm looking forward to hunting that.
Bring them together.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll see how that does. But yeah, I definitely think that the work involved is definitely worth the time taken. But in the end, you find cool new shit too. We found some really dope CBG strains and some weirdos that come out of the, you know, that's the whole point of exploring this plant, you know? For years and years, people were finding expressions based on trichomes, flavor, and how high you got. I'm just taking a different approach to that. And, you know, we were starting to do this, you know, you talk to people that just saw no use in something that didn't get you high. And, yo, this shit's at Eckerd's now. I mean, I'm sorry, I'm old. Shit's at, yeah, and like, you know, whatever little store you want, there's a CBD section or like, you know, it's become so normalized that it's everywhere. So I want to take people back to the pure, you know, plant and the essence of it, which I think gets lost when you start, you know, running it in different ways. You know, the way that I feel about Solventless Hash, if you like Solventless Hash and you feel that passionate about it, there's a reason I feel that passionate about CBD being processed that way, or CBD head. CBD melt is some of the most, I don't know, I love CBD melt. I could smoke CBD 1-to-1, 2-to-1 melt all day for the rest of my life. It's absolutely amazing. So, do you
have a ratio that you like in your personal, you know, extraction or your personal consumption? For everyone who's tuned in, you know, let's talk about ratios for a second. what are some ideal ratios, and what do you personally prefer?
So when I first started out, I really liked taking the high CBD stuff and like extracting that and keep it separate and like adding it like a cherry on top. As I've progressed now, I kind of like the weird ratios, like the things in between, like 10-to-1, 7-to-1. Ideally for me, it's just how those different strains have an effect, or that entourage effect is very different than the CBD strains that we see mostly that are, high CBD, low THC, or high THC, high CBD. That's unfortunately the only two experiences, if any, people have with it, or CBD only. I like the in between. There's, I can't even explain it. I just think that in a way, I get the essence of everything else when the percentages of CBD are somewhere in between. A 5 to 10-to-1 ratio. I don't know. And I'll give you a weird example. In Oregon, there's a lot of really crazy people, like what we talked about. There's like Mac 1 dominant CBD, Lemon G, Purple Diesel.
That sounds good.
Yeah, it's really tight, honestly. And it was really cool to see such a wide expression of terpenes under that compound, and it made me look at it differently. A lot of people out there breeding and doing really amazing work with that, and this is not hemp-based stuff. So as far as ratios go in my personal consumption, I've also weaned off of it a lot over the past few years, because if it's not solventless CBD or something I made myself, I tend to kind of stray away from it. And even then, I don't know, I'm just weird like that. I'll take it how I can get it at this point, because it's not something that's very common. So most of the time I'm catching myself with like 1-to-1, 2-to-1s, like something like a critical mass or a canatonic these days. It's really what's most readily available. Hemp, what people, I support it, I promote it and stuff. I tend to stay away from it when it comes to like consumption,
Like a lot of the commercially available products that you were just talking about that are in every supermarket, hemp farm quality, not very good most of the time. I think Dave's Not Here made a really good little comment as well. Hopefully we'll expand the ratios to include others like CBG and CBN. Great photographer. If anyone's not following him, you absolutely should be. How do you feel about some of the other CB blanks? There's, CBD is the focus of the conversation here, but I'm sure, you mentioned CBG. I think everyone's had some CBN from some weed that they left and forgot about and came back and it put them straight to sleep. What are some of the other variables there, some of the other CB blanks that you're excited about?
I love all the CB blanks. So in 2014, we were putting CBG in beard oil because I didn't know what the hell to do with it. I didn't know. And I was like, oh, cool, put it in our salves. And dude, it's been a big hit. CBG is, if people aren't familiar, it is, the catalyst genome, it's the one that's first, the start, before there's THC, CBD, it is all CBG, and then its genetic makeup takes it away to whatever it is, but it always starts as CBG. That's the first compound formed in hemp or cannabis. And so the fact that we've been able to manipulate genetic material to have harvestable material that doesn't turn to THCA or CBD is amazing, because now we're seeing these isolates, these high percentage pure concentrates that I think everything has its place. And even when if it's in a mix or in a spectrum, I've seen really good feedback from my topical customers that swear by that compound. CBN for the same reason. You can, we call it the nighttime compound, honestly. It takes less CBN to knock you out than it does indica, derived.
Myrcene. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's interesting how that compound works, man. It's like it's nature's melatonin, you know, like true. I mean, truly, like it's I don't know. CBL is also another good one. It's there's CBT, which one of my little proteges was talking to me about. It's cool, man. People are, you know, we talk about two. You know, we talk about THC and CBD, and now we have the conversation that's kind of broadened out. But dude, there's over 120, 30, 40, something like that, like compounds that we've yet to really, you know, get into, and we talk maybe at most about 5 or 6. So I'm excited to see things progress. You know, I remember when we were isolating CBD and making, you know, kilos of CBD. I remember when CBD went for over $50,000 a kilogram because no one had it. It was rare. We saw the same thing happen with CBG. You know, it was like $70,000. You know, now you can get one of them for like $2 a gram and one for $8. The more that we manipulate things and make them accessible, the easier it becomes for the market and everyone, therefore, to either play with it or consume it or have it, which I think is really great. Definitely extracting CBG material has probably been the most difficult of all the CBD stuff. I've dry sifted a bunch of CBG. I still have a bunch of flower in Colorado I need to dry sift for you guys and bring in. That's all. But it's up there. It's the bane of my thing right now, but it's where there's a will, there's a way. And then to answer your question about the micron size, I actually spoke with Cody and mentioned that, you know, the heads are so small, and I've seen people talk about making custom bag sizes going down to like the 2 micron, which I'm like, all right, how long were you there? Because holy crap, that's very small. But it wouldn't surprise me that, you know, the volume of that much water pushing down on heads that are that small could probably still easily squeeze through or melt through a 2 micron screen. I think it's about displacing the weight of that volume, more like a wet sift kind of situation where you can spread something out to have a better result of less damaged heads from the weight. That's how sensitive these heads are. It's kind of weird. And again, some of the other things that I mentioned, like, you know, controlling your temperatures and playing around with that will allow you to have better success if you're just trying to extract CBD dominant material.
So some new techniques are definitely going to be on the horizon, hopefully, to do that properly. One that I want to go back to real fast that someone asked about for everyone who's tuned in, are there any, you know, seed banks or genetics that people can have access to online to purchase to start pheno hunting? Are there any, you know, seed banks that you would recommend, or any particular strains you'd recommend people going out and trying to look at or purchase?
Yeah, somebody had asked me what the best strain was to have to wash and had the best place to have, and I'm like, when I find it, I'll let the world know, man.
Yeah.
That on live, but there's no one trick pony, so to speak. You know, man, it's really hard. Like I myself breed. There's a few, you know, there's a bunch of seed banks I follow that all seem to be like cool guys, but when it comes to like their CBD selection, I'd be better off saying, like, I'll give you MedTree Seeds has, you know, a strong line of CBD dominant varieties that are, you know, a lot of cookie dominant stuff, a lot of like really cool stuff that I'm personally not doing. I actually have some of his stuff. Can't wait to pop it and check it out, you know, but I've been following each other for years. I know his work. I've seen it. I know he's solid. There's a couple other people, man, but I'm honestly kind of blanking right now. Alfred Chronic Seeds. Clancy has been one of my best friends for a long time, man, and his cultivar, Dogfather, and a couple other, Stephen Hawking Kush, which is a CBD dominant strain too. He has a lot of CBD dominant Kush types as to where like, MedTree has a lot of CBD dominant cookie types.
So MedTree was the first one you mentioned. Cryptochronic, was that the second one you mentioned? Alpha Chronic, okay. Okay, nice.
Shoot. I don't know. We need more CBD breeders. If I'm missing, please let me know. I think so a lot of people are doing is you see big breeders now, and they'll like drop a CBD pack. Like I don't want to call it a gimmick, but it's more like look, we crossed my flagship whatever to like some CBD, and now it's CBD flagship. And I see a lot of people doing that, and that's cool.
But they're not doing it for the CBD. They're just, I see what you're saying there.
Yeah. The guys who made Cannatonic resin seeds, I believe, there's a lot of people in Europe that are doing really awesome work. And honestly, the Cannatonic that they made and the AC/DC is a clone only of a pheno of Cannatonic. I don't know that, but I don't know. It's really humbling to be able to work with some of the best hash I've ever watched that was CBD dominant was Cannatonic. It's to go back on that, and that's been around. I don't think those guys get enough credit because we talk about the whole, Charlotte's Web hype here and how things started in Colorado, but it was, always a hemp-based thing, but I applaud the guys that found the genome and the skunk one and that weird plant that was like it, but not like it, that led to this whole crazy road of cannabis-derived CBD, which has been more of my focus now as I've seen how the hemp market's gone. And like you said, I think hemp is a wonderful supplement. I think we should all have hemp-based products in our life. I think we should be having everything from CBD in our ink paper to my toilet paper.
So the industrial applications of hemp are, people have known about it for a while, but it is worth repeating that it's not just the melt and the resin in the heads, but that, hemp as a plant offers so much for humanity without being melodramatic at all. It really does.
Absolutely. So, and then when we talk about cannabis, I truly think, it's a beautiful plant in the sense of there's, they're purples and greens and OGs and sours and hazes. And just talking compounds, not even, genotypes, where you're just like, I don't know, CBD has changed my life in that aspect. And looking at it also, I think, is only strengthening the gene pool. One of the only old school plant that I keep around out of that first bunch, when you talk Charlotte's Web, AC/DC, R4, is I've got a Ringo's Gift Mom that has been doing work for a real long time. And CBD Diesel from... is it 303 seeds, I believe? I don't know if they're still kicking, man, but they used to make some super awesome shit. And the AC/DC Backcross, which has been years in the making, and everything else I've kind of let go and moved forward into finding other things, because the thing that I see with other people doing and their genetics and what, their lane is prospectively is I'm seeing the same mudded out genetics and the same kind of like... I don't know, man. It's like, not to talk shit, but like, I'll give you an example. When everything starts to sound like a pastry, like how different is everything really, And like, I just told you, I'm smoking on churro and ice cream cake myself, so not to sound like...
I wasn't sure if you literally had those like out of the fridge or if you're smoking on the churro. Yeah. I know, glazed donut, it's hilarious. I think... that's almost the marketing aspect of cannabis in like full force, is your Girl Scout cookies really Girl Scout? I feel like that's the first. First it was AK-47 and White Widow.
Yeah.
And before that it was Acapulco Gold and some of those land strains. And now you've got, I don't know what it's going to be next. Maybe it's going to be like all the jet fuel and some of the super gassy strains. But I think you're right. The naming conventions go in cycles, and it is kind of funny.
No, yeah, I applaud people that are like keepers of genetics, like people that are still holding down all the OGs, like the SFE, the Ghost. You know, I applaud you.
Mm-hmm.
People that are still rocking and maintaining the chem lines and strengthening them, I applaud you. People
Mm-hmm.
that are growing hazes and you know 12 to 16 weekers that are like, oh man, it's a whole nother world of flower concentrates even though they don't yield as well, but when you want to talk like psychoactive, like cannabis-based extracts, go for that stuff. That stuff is real cool. Yeah, it's interesting. You know, people have. I'm seeing the comebacks. You know, and while again, I like the sweet stuff. I just like to know that people are, you know, and there are people, of course. Please don't assume that I assume that there aren't, but it's good to know there are people that are trying to strengthen the lines, not muddle them down. So I want to take that mentality with CBD and not rework the same Charlotte's Web or, you know, even AC/DC for that matter. You know, I have it specifically because it hits a target ratio. That's the only reason I even keep things in my lineup at that point. If it's a specific ratio where it's been 22-1 for years, man, this plant has been 20
super consistent,
like Coca-Cola, you know, like it's
the same everywhere.
And it's, you know, the reason I did the back cross is because Matt Rise talked up on a lot about this, and two reasons actually that I do what I do is, one, he infamously said that you can't wash CBD, so I'm working on that.
So he set out to prove that wrong.
Yeah, and then, you know, the second thing is where he's wholeheartedly right is how fragile and hard ACBC and plants like that were to grow. They're absolutely difficult. Like one little thing, and they're more finicky than the finickiest OG or haze plant or, you know, the slowest growing cookie plant you've ever seen. It's crazy. So it definitely takes learning her because she's definitely a fragile lady. So we had to beef her up, you know, like in the best possible way, because I adored the medicine from this plant, but I absolutely detested growing it. And I met so many growers that would do it with a good mindset of knowing that they were, you know, growing and spreading this genetic that we obviously needed at the time. Man, it was a bitch to grow. You know, to grow, especially on any level, commercially or otherwise, you know. And so with the back cross and that blueberry project, our whole goal was to have hybridized vigor where you can be excited about growing this 20+1 in your garden, and it wasn't going to be a headache, and you can put it alongside your Mac 1 or your Mango Haze or whatever the fuck you have, and it would be amazing. And that's, you know, we wanted to basically, I wanted to make that more viable to people that wanted to, you know, I think it's off-putting to people to know that these plants take up more of a learning curve than what you made. But I still encourage everyone as a grower that they should try and learn and see, and you learn so much more about what your plants need through what watching this very unique plant does, and how it's interesting. You know, it's made me look at other plants differently, growing CBD.
Definitely sounds like a skill test to be able to do that. Are there any aspects of growing CBD strains, I know that there's so many of them, that someone who's either just getting into it or trying to, is there something that, you know, is there some just high level advice you could offer to people trying to grow CBD strains? Is there anything different that they should think about, or is every strain different?
So the higher the percentage in CBD, usually the more finicky it is. The high CBD girls are the ones that are like, yo, relax. I'm
special.
Yeah. But basically, I would just say go in with a light foot, and you know, like these plants don't like the same. They don't like to be fed the same. They are weird where you put them. Like they're fun, and then they end up growing on you, and you love them forever. And like I keep them around forever. You know, I've
don't give up.
Yeah, don't give up. You know, and that's the thing too. In the future, I want to try to provide a place where people can share their experience growing CBD, so that we can have those kind. You know, it's easier for me to start to finish and explain, well, here's what I do, than to say like, well, this is what's going to kill it, because I've had to learn the hard way. But overfeeding, too much light,
yeah,
too much water, like period. They're just very finicky. So, you know, go in with a little bit goes a long way, and you'll see. I pulled my hair out thinking about working with some of those original plants. They were really, like, they were really, honestly, they tested you every day. So I think now we're to a point now where I think unless you're trying to keep that very specific cut, if we're talking ACDC, you know, or whatever, whether it's the Village cut or the Courtney cut or whatever the case is, you know, the difficulty, I think, has been kind of flattened out a little bit to where it's much easier for people to jump in and want to do what they do. You know, Alpha Chronic makes a bunch of great CBD seeds. MedTree, I've got CBD seeds available privately that I've literally started making for parents to grow, so that they were just as uniform and as foolproof as possible for those reasons. You know. I would be, you know, I'll later on, I'll look up collectively and make a post, but I think every day I talk to more people that are doing this, but we definitely need more. It's definitely still a very small circle of nerds that are obsessing over this really weird compound. So,
well, I hope we get some more people to join your CBD army, because, you know, we've got about 13 minutes left here, and I definitely wanted to ask you, you know, how are solventless extraction methods and CBD going forward right now? I mean, we've talked a lot about trichome structure, some of the difficulty with getting it. You know, what do you see happening over the next year, couple years with solventless and CBD? Do you see more growth there?
Absolutely. You know, a few years ago, it wasn't something that we could sit there and say this is commercially viable. It would have to be something that would have been done on a small craft, artisan, small batch specialist level, which the only way it was possible to do, and still is. I mean, that's basically where I've had to be at, because, you know, where the market is. But now, I definitely think that, you know, when you look and you talk solventless production, whether we're talking commercial scale, whether we're talking caregiver, you know, whatever it is, from, you know, from personal rosin room to, you know, state-funded medical room, there is a viable option for everyone to have safe solventless oil, you know, and skill that, again, when you pick up, you and I are going to have different preferences on what we like. And I just encourage everyone to be able to try to expand on that. But, dude, with the way genetics are going, with all of the equipment that's available to us and the new techniques that we are formulating, coming out with collectively as a community, sharing, and, you know, nothing that I have, with the exception of how long it's taken me screwing up breeding these plants, pretty much, like, everything else is pretty much open source, man. And I plan to share all that to try to expand that. I don't want anyone, any centers, any medical providers to be discouraged because they washed X amount of grams and got back a point percentage, you know, abysmal yield that's no good to them. We're at a point now where we can do better, and there's no reason nobody, no matter where you are or how you're situated, you shouldn't have a strong CBD program. It's such, you know, it's a demand everywhere, you know, and CBD can be it can be so different, you know. Like, what CBD is to me is very different than what it is for somebody to have a few CBD strains in their lineup for their market versus what it is to have for someone to have CBD in theirs, you know. And we're getting to a point now where if you like hazes and sours and OGs, then there's CBD enriched spectrums. Not even to a point where I started looking at it as a breeder and saying I see more success enriching a spectrum than trying to take over it. And then through selective breeding, I end up finding some real gold on both sides. You know, I don't find the super huge fat head THC heavy heads and I'm like, man, those are gone. No, I put those off to the side for other projects, but focus is to make sure that what I just explained is that in CBD or CBN or CBG, and we're starting to see that a lot more. So, you know, you guys have made it a lot easier on a commercial level to be able to do things like that. That brew system on a lot of hemp applications has been honestly something that people do not stop bugging me about, which is a good thing. So,
awesome.
You know, and yeah, again, 2 years from now, a year from now, I think it's going to be a completely different market in the sense of like it'll be on a connoisseur level where we look at things like, you know, certain hash on a connoisseur level, and we look at that as the holy grail of mechanical separation, you know, growing, extraction, hash making, and you'll be able to say, yeah, this Canatonic 6-star or this Goji CBD, you know, 5-star melt, or, you know, live rosin is fucking sick, you know, like that's my goal, is to be able to expand that, you know.
So bring that to the connoisseurs is what you're really saying, is, you know, not have every connoisseur just be focused on, you know, THC melt, but be just as interested in bringing similar quality products from the CBD world.
I think it boils down to the flavors when we talk about that market, and that's also, you know, my goal is to be able to dab somebody out to some live rosin or some melt, and not whether that was CBD or THC, but holy fuck, that tasted really good. What was that? Oh, this was this, you know, and then we get into things like that, and I just think that we're making healthier hash at that point, you know, like it's a different kind of product altogether. And there's no reason they can't coexist. So I've spoken to a lot of connoisseurs to where that's very foreign to them because of what we know now of CBD and how we think of it. So my goal is to reinvent that a little bit, or as best I can, and try to widen that, you know, with what I was doing with, you know, DJ Short's Blueberry and the ACD, doing with the Key Lime Pie, what I'm doing with some other crosses that I can't talk about right now, but there's definitely something for everyone, from the lemon to the sweet to the sour to the haze to the rotting garbage can with the cherry top. Everything.
I know, some people love it.
Yeah, man, I'm looking out for everyone's terps, you know, because I think that there's people that can benefit from those monoterpenes and this compound and this spectrum. So, you know, if I'm doing this much, I imagine there's somebody somewhere doing a ton more. So
that's awesome. Well, it's really exciting to, you know, really zero in on CBD in this particular episode. We've got about 7 minutes left. I wanted to ask, you know, probably 2 more questions here. One of them is, you know, outside of hash and some of the traditional products that are being made, you know, at the top end of the craft spectrum, what are some of the products that, you know, people can think about making as caregivers for patients? You know, you said you started out making products for kids, like really, you know, medical focused CBD. What kinds of products were those? Or are we talking about edibles for the most part, and tinctures?
Tinctures, suppositories, edibles. I make capsules in different ratios from 31 to 1-to-1, depending on the ailment. You know, honestly, the test subject for the edible we won the Cannabis Cup win was a good friend of mine. Still to this day, Lexi Hates Epilepsy is her Instagram, but she's, you know, she's a lot older now, but she, honestly, her mom told us that she had really amazing results with her behavioral issues and aggression issues using the CBD dominant cannabis edible, which, you know, her daughter was a medical patient in the state at the time, so no problem. But that was really the first time I realized, oh, this might help kids. And then I had 3 other patients at the time that we shared them with, and all of them just told us the same thing. The calming, soothing effects, the anti-anxiety effects that they were getting with their seeing in their children, excuse me, was worth them continuing that sort of regimen. But everything from suppositories to edibles to cooking oils to vinaigrettes, RSO, topicals, shoot, yeah, man, we would pretty much do everything that we could, honestly. Did lollipops for a while and tried to stray away from the sugar. Did the honey for a long time. We figured out a way how to infuse the honey without boiling it out, so it was just sweetener. So you still had all of the health benefits of the honey, plus the active, cannabinoid therapy, which is a big thing. Edibles never, I don't know, it's weird how the wind and the edible thing kind of stumbled along, but mostly it was always oils, tinctures, capsules, different sorts of infused products. Like, basically, we had a lot of patients that, from a dietary standpoint, if they weren't consuming X amount of cannabinoids and it wasn't helping their condition, and I also had a lot of pediatric cancer patients at the beginning, and so I learned a lot really quickly through them, and absorption, and it's, I don't know, learning to make products for patients that are in need because of it's their condition, their situation, or the pain that they're going through is a different process than making like a gourmet edible that you'd go and see in a shop. But at the same time, really not, because and that's the funny thing. So I don't know. The only thing I think we haven't done that I haven't been able to do that I really want to do is I want to get transdermal gels. Oh man, solventless only. So I've been trying to do it now for 3 or 4 years. It's real hard. But I know that within a year or two, if I just get the right pieces together, I can do it. But I want to make fully solventless. You
let me know. I want to try that.
I'm working on it. I'll show up with a tub of that stuff. But yeah, there's just so many, and here's my thing, man. There's nothing, just if you, dream it. You can build it. You can do it. That's that's what I would tell anyone trying to figure out or work on things that are new to them. Study and talk to people that are passionate about what you are in a different way. I've got my lane. I'm happy to talk about it whenever. I've got my friends that have their perspective lanes that I go to them first before I even open my mouth about things. And this is how I collectively learn and teach and learn more. There's people that make me feel like when they talk about CBD, I listen because they've been doing it much longer. There's a lot of Israeli scientists and chemists that I follow that I really work with and talk to. There's a lot of people in Europe that I reach out to just on a respectful level because I've been working their genetics. So I know that there was people before me that touched this plant for the reason I'm touching it. I know there'll be people after me, but I just want to make sure to try to make the best possible the best possible spin that I can put on it and hope that it will help someone. So the way the direction the solventless market is going, the people have been more excited to talk about it, being able to consult on a commercial scale and being able to see people succeed. It's honestly something that makes me just as happy as what I just talked about. So I want to see everyone crushing CBD. I don't want to just talk about crushing CBD. I can't. The conversation gets bigger, and then we can, as a collective whole, talk what's next. It's CBD today. Tomorrow, I believe it'll probably be CBT, CBL. Those will probably be the next ones that jump up. We're really focused on CBN and G right now, but there's more, and talking about CBDA extractions. I've only been able to do it a few times, and I've only been able to do it on my pure pressure press. No bullshit. That's also another thing. There's just a lot of fun things that with the right material and the right gear you can do. I fully plan to jump on the CBDA train and show people that this is a solventless extract that can be done as well. So I know we're a little short on time.
We got 15 seconds left here before Instagram cuts us off. How can people find you? At Foxtracts?
Yes, sir, at Foxtracts.
Yeah, make sure to follow Fox. We're going to have the whole thing up on YouTube. Would love to have you back on the show. Thanks for coming, man.
Anytime, brother. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank